So I do want to congratulate you on taking an interest in sprint training. It is one of the most powerful development tools in your fitness regimen if implemented properly. Again, I'm going to emphasize you need to have a 6-month foundation, some sort of resistance training or other gym protocols. It could be high rocks, CrossFit. Again, you can just be doing some treadmill workouts on top of resistance training in a gym over a period of 6 months, 3 times a week, at least twice a week for a period of 6 months. And then at that point, after 6 months, then you can consider month 1 coming out to a park, softball field, soccer field, and that sort of thing, and commencing the process of learning how to sprint. Okay, so in addition to the weight training, like I said, you probably want to do like 3 sets of each of those major movements. And like I said, in the case of like your lower body movements where you're doing, like I said, squats, lunges, or leg presses, maybe you could kind of alternate that from workout to workout. But at the tail end of your workout, I would suggest you add a 1 minute, just a 1 minute run on the treadmill, just a modest pace, just a modest jog, and basically just kind of, like I said, what you're doing is you're trying to adapting your muscles and your tendons and ligaments and so forth to get them ready 6 months down the road or a few months down the road for the stresses that are involved in sprint training. But a kind of a slow jog for a minute, it's not going to fatigue you too much, but it's just a start towards preparing yourself. So the main caution that I have pretty much about implementing a sprint training program is that while a lot of people may think, hey, I did track in high school, or I do regular workouts at the gym, I go, I'm a part of a run club or something like that, and that's an easy thing to just start doing. But there's maybe not a recognition of the fact that the forces involved, the ground contact times involved are much faster. Limb velocities and so forth are much faster than what you're going to typically have in running. The forces, like I said, the forces that are applied when sprinting are much different and happen much more quickly than in the case of weight training and resistance training in the gym. So, the forces involved are going through tissues. Your Achilles, your hamstrings, your adductors, your calves, and so you're at higher. And again, one thing we do need to keep in mind that a lot of individuals who are coming from other types of training programs may underestimate the forces involved and all the muscle groups and so forth that are involved in sprint training. Again, there are very short contact times. You've got your Achilles and your hip flexors, calves, and so forth that are involved in the process of sprinting. That, again, those movement patterns are not replicated in any other type of program, and so you just need to be very cautious about rushing into a max velocity efforts without a proper gradual process over a period of months, rather than trying to do it in week 1. One thing that a lot of individuals may not be aware of, but sprint training involves forces that are being applied in a very short time frame, basically between 80 to 120 milliseconds, and can be 4 to 6 times body weight, depending on the individual, depending on the effort involved. But it's just a degree of intensity that is not typical in most gym protocols, and so that's why we need to approach this in a cautious, gradual effort, so that we're not inviting injury, which will keep us away from the ability to continue this sort of training. So that's why I'm trying to give you the caution. Like I said, congratulations on being interested, but just be cautious about it. The concept of gradual progression, it's a function really both of both volume as well as intensity. So you don't, again, with sprint training, you're not trying to sprint, for example, distance runners, they may run for miles. A sprint training workout literally will be could be well under 1,000 meters of total volume in a workout, and that may come as a surprise to some individuals. But you know, in the first month when we're doing this, we're literally probably talking, like I said, we're talking 40 to 60 meters 7 times. I mean, max, you know, I mean, not even 500 meters of training, and that's not even at high intensity the first month. But like I said, we're trying to do this over a period of months of gradual adaptation. So there's a concept in resistance training that's referred to as reps in reserve. So let's say if you've got a weight, say 135 pounds, maybe for a squat or a bench, and you're capable of doing it for 8 reps. If you pull the weight out, you know, you put the weight on the bar, at rep 6, you start to feel, hey, this is kind of challenging here. Rep 7, you're kind of struggling a little bit, but you fight through and you make it to that 8th rep. So you've done 8, you've got 8 rep potential, you did 8 reps, you have 0 reps in reserve. You did a max effort, 5th gear effort. So that's kind of your reps in reserve concept in the gym. Now, one thing maybe I overlooked here, but basically the reps in reserve concept is kind of analogous to like a stick shift automobile. So you've got, you know, you go from 1st gear to 5th gear where you're able to go at higher speeds. So the reps in reserve is just kind of a function of how much you have in the tank of ability, and the intensity of the workout is a function of the number of reps in reserve. So again, if you have the potential to do 8 reps and you do 8, you have 0 reps in reserve. That's 5th gear. If you have 1 rep in reserve because you only did 7 reps, that's 4th gear. That's a high effort, but not a max effort. If you have 2 reps in reserve, that's a moderate effort, but it's still well short of a max effort. And again, if we're trying to describe this concept, I'll call the speed in reserve, comparable to reps in reserve in the gym, where they're saying, okay, you're able to do 8 reps, and you do 8 reps, that's 5th gear in a vehicle, you know, max effort. If you do 7 reps instead of the 8 that you were capable of, where you had 1 rep in reserve, kind of in 4th gear, which is like a high effort, but just not a max effort. If you do 6 reps out of the 8 that you're capable of doing, it's still a moderate effort. You had 2 reps in reserve, you're kind of operating in 3rd gear, and that might be where we're going to kind of start off our program in the first month, kind of in that 3rd gear, moderate effort, with a bit of speed in reserve capability, so that we're cautiously approaching the process of creating adaptations to all the muscles, ligaments, and tendons and so forth that are involved in sprinting. Maybe another way to describe the gears when we're talking about outside the gym, but actually, you know, being on the ground. 1st gear might be just a casual walk when you're at the mall, you know, in no rush, but you're just casually walking. That's 1st gear. 2nd gear would be maybe a brisk walk. You're outside, you're not distracted by a cell phone, you're walking at a very brisk pace. That's 2nd gear. It is certainly intentional, but not high intensity. 3rd gear might be kind of a jog. Certainly, it's a moderate effort. It's something that you have a lot of speed in reserve, but you're certainly exerting a bit of effort. 4th gear is a higher effort, and you still have a little speed in reserve, but it's not all out. 5th gear, gas to the floor. Okay, so dynamic warm-up might include something like this. So say for like squats, you just do a bodyweight squat. Okay, you can do that about 10 to 12 times for like your quads and hips. Then for your hamstrings, doing something like this. Okay, again, at least 10 to 12 times. Then for your hips, going to the side. Then you can do as well for quads, kind of like extending your lower limb. Then you also work your shoulders as well, because your upper body's involved. And then do some calf rotations as well. So after your dynamic warm up, again, you can do a few just very soft runs out, And then what I'm recommending for your first month is you're going to do step it out about 40 to 60 meters, so about 11 steps is about 10 meters, and you're going to go in third gear. Okay, third gear, moderate effort, nothing, you know, you're definitely leaving some speed in reserve, and you're going to do that for 7 to 8 reps, 7 to 8 intervals. Again, this is going to be one time a week. So basically you've got your normal 3 gym sessions. You're going to pull one of those out, so you can pick which one you want to pull out. Maybe it's the weekend workout, and your weekend workout will be your at the park doing this session here. So again, so your first month, you're doing 7 to 8 intervals, 40 to 60 meters, moderate effort. So it's basically just kind of like a jog, maybe slightly over a jog, but just kind of a casual run, 40 to 60 meters. And you definitely have speed in reserve, but you're trying to create gradual adaptations because your body, your first month, you know, is not ready for max intensity efforts, because we're trying to avoid the injuries that are typical in adults that attempt to sprint when they're not ready for it. So that's your first month. Month 2, we're going to step it up to 4th gear. So 3rd gear was a moderate effort. 4th gear is a higher effort. You've still got some speed in reserve. You're still not going max effort here. You're stepping it up. You're going to be, you know, going out to probably more like 50 to 60 meters, 7 to 8 intervals. Again, this is only going to be once a week. So both in your first month and your second month, you're still only going once a week out to the park, and you're continuing to do your resistance training workouts in the gym twice a week, hopefully. And that's basically your second month. But like I said, we're gradually increasing the intensity of your workouts, but still leaving some speed in reserve. Okay, month 3, we're going to step it up again. Again, we're still doing just once a week while you continue to do your gym workouts. But in month 3, we're going to still not going up to 5th gear. We're going to kind of be between 4th and 5th gear, kind of like a 90% effort here. We're kind of pushing the gas to the floor a little bit, but not just almost, but not quite there. We still want to leave a little bit of speed in reserve, because you still need a little more time to go from not having done any sprint training possibly in many years to doing a degree of intensity. Again, you're putting force through your Achilles, through your hamstrings involved in the swing phase, and just a lot of muscles, a lot of tendons, a lot of ligaments that are involved in the process of sprinting. You need to prepare them for that. So like I said, we're kind of gradually progressing through in that 3rd month. Now, one thing I do want to remind you of is that when you're doing these intervals, you do want to allow for adequate recovery between them. This is not a conditioning workout. You're trying to adapt the body to take in, absorb force that you're applying to the ground when you're doing more intense efforts. And the thing I will say is that sprinting, when done properly, can be a very powerful force in your overall health and fitness, but it just has to be approached with progressive adaptation and with caution and kind of respect. So basically, speed is earned, it's not forced. I do want to kind of emphasize this again. So again, sprint training can be one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal for developing overall fitness and health and performance, but it just needs to be approached, like I said, with a gradual adaptation and respect for the forces that are involved, the short ground contact times, and all the muscles and ligaments and tendons and joints and so forth that are involved in the process. So we want to have that gradual adaptation, having a foundation of strength, and then over a period of months going from 3rd gear to 4th gear to kind of 4.5 gear, and then after the 3rd month we can consider doing a 2nd session or going into 5th gear, max velocity intervals in the 4th month.